Start the story over.
Okay, let's start from the beginning. The village of Thornwick teetered on the brink of ruin at the edge of Blackthorn Wood, a forlorn cluster of sagging timber huts and crumbling fences battered by neglect and despair. The fields, once golden with grain, lay trampled and barren, scarred by the boots of raiders and the torchlight of arsonists. Smoke drifted from the charred skeletons of barns, mingling with the sour stench of rot from livestock carcasses left to fester where they'd been slaughtered. Children huddled in doorways, their faces gaunt and hollow, while the adults moved like ghosts. Eyes sunken, hands trembling as they clutched makeshift spears or rusted hoes, their last pitiful defense. For weeks, a gang of orcs led by a shaman named Gorzod had preyed on them, stealing goats and pigs, burning what they couldn't carry, and snarling demands for tribute in guttural roars that promised death if unmet. The villagers' meagre stores were gone, their coffers emptied to a scant 50 gold pieces, scraped from hidden jars and torn hems. They nailed a bounty to the square's splintered board, a plea scratched in shaky script. End the orcs. Save us. Under a sky thick with grey clouds, 3 strangers arrived, drawn by coin, duty, or shadows of their own. Aremus Medeus lingered at the square's edge, his dark cloak snapping in the wind like a raven's wing, a gnarled staff gripped in one pale hand. Beside him stood a figure swathed in heavy rags, hooded and hunched, its form swallowed by tattered cloth that dragged in the mud. The figure leaned on a rusted sword as if it were a crutch, moving with a slow, pained shuffle that kept onlookers at bay. "My brother," Aremus would say, his voice sharp as a blade's edge, sick with leprosy. "Keep your distance, if you value your skin." The lie was seamless. No one dared breach it, fear of plague a potent shield. Whatever truth lurked beneath those rags, Aremus hoarded it like a miser with gold, his icy gaze revealing nothing. The bounty was a means to an end, though what end he kept locked tight, his necromantic arts subtle but ready. A touch that drained life, a spell to bolster his own, and a bond with the figure he wouldn't name. Drag, a wood elf with eyes like polished jade, stood near the bounty board, his longbow slung across his back, twin daggers glinting at his hips. His leather armor was scuffed and patched, his cloak threadbare but neatly tied, and he carried himself with the quiet grace of a hunter stalking prey. The orcs were a blight he'd come to erase. Monsters deserved no mercy, and he had reasons, though his stoic mask gave little away. His skills were those of the wild, arrows that struck true, a knack for tracking, senses sharpened by elven blood. A fly buzzed near the board, his boot crushed it into the dirt with a soft crunch. "Pests," he muttered, wiping the sole clean with a flick. Bartholomew Battlequack's strong arm waddled into the square last, his chainmail clanking with each awkward step, feathers ruffling in the breeze. A humanoid duck, beak, webbed feet, and all, he gripped a warhammer in each hand, their heads notched and stained from countless fights. Once a human mercenary, he'd crossed a wizard and paid with his form and his past, left as this quacking oddity with nothing but muscle and instinct. The bounty was a job: smash the orcs, claim the gold, maybe stir a memory loose. His strength lay in those hammers, and a refusal to stay down. 50 gold, he quacked, tapping a hammer against his beak. Better be worth the waddle. Mara, the village elder, a wiry crone with a face carved by grief and time, shuffled forward, her cane sinking into the mud with each step. Her hands shook as she clutched a burlap pouch, the faint clink of coins barely audible over the wind. "Gorzod's gang is north, a mile off, holed up in the old quarry," she rasped, her voice breaking but fierce. 10 orcs, maybe more, and that shaman's got dark magic, curses, bolts of light, things that'll steal your breath and leave you cold. They've taken everything, our food, our hope. Stop 'em, and this gold's yours. Fail, and we're dead by winter." Her eyes, red-rimmed and pleading, darted between the trio. Aremus's cold stare, Draug's taut readiness, Battlequack's twitching feathers. Behind her, a young girl clung to her skirts, sobbing quietly, while a man with a bandaged arm muttered prayers to gods who hadn't answered. "You together. First I've seen 'em," Aremus said, his gaze flicking to the others. "Coin's what matters." Draug gave a curt nod. "I'll shoot if they fight." Battlequack smirked, a duckish twist of his beak. "Long as there's skulls to crack, I'm in." "Let's waddle, spooky and pointy." Mara pressed the pouch into Aremus's hand, her fingers trembling. "Don't care who you are, just save us." She pointed north with her cane, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Please." The trio turned away, leaving the villagers' desperate stares behind, a ragged band tethered by fragile threads of necessity. The The path to the quarry twisted through blackthorn wood, a labyrinth of roots and shadows beneath gnarled pines that clawed at the sky.
Continue on.
Okay, let's keep going. Tough bastards, Battlequack panted, blood matting his feathers, one arm hanging limp as he leaned against a tree. Drag stepped from the shadows, crushing a beetle underfoot with a scowl. Weaklings die, he said, eyeing Aramis's companion. He's tough, for a sick man. Leprosy's stubborn, Aramis replied, voice flat, tugging the rags back into place with practiced care. We're not done. The quarry loomed ahead, a jagged pit carved into the earth, its cliffs casting long, twisted shadows over a camp of smouldering fires. 8 orcs sprawled around a spit, gnawing on a stolen pig, their grunts and laughter echoing off the stone. At the centre stood Gorzod, clad in a robe stitched with bones, chanting over an altar of skulls, his staff pulsing with a dark, sickly glow. Aramis felt his amulet stir, a faint echo of power that set his teeth on edge. 10, like she said, Drag whispered from a ridge, bow in hand, his voice low and tense. Shaman's the real threat. Battlequack gripped his hammers, wincing at his wounds. Smash and splash? Aramis shook his head, his eyes narrowing. Too many. We play smart. He nodded at his companion. He'll stumble in, draw him out. You snipe, elf. Duck. Wait for the chaos. Drag scowled but nodded, his fingers tightening on his bowstring. Don't get us killed, Battlequack chuckled weakly, a hoarse quack. Spooky's got a plan. I'm in, they split. Drag climbed the ridge, bow taut and ready. Battlequack crouched near the quarry's entrance, hammers poised despite his shaking hands. Aramis nudged the ragged figure forward. Go slow, he murmured, his voice a quiet command. The figure obeyed, shambling into view, a lost soul in tattered cloth, dragging its sword like a burden. The orcs spotted him, their jeers rising like a storm. What's this? A beggar? One growled, hefting a club with a sneer. 5 lumbered over, laughing and prodding, leaving Gorzod at his chant. Drag's arrows flew, 2 quick shots, one piercing a chest with a wet thunk, another burying into an arm. The orcs spun, roaring in fury, their mirth turning to rage. Battlequack charged from his hiding spot, hammers whirling despite his wounds. Duck season's open, he quacked, his voice ragged but defiant. His first blow cracked a skull, sending the orc sprawling. He spun, smashing the second with a hammer to the chest, and as it fell, he grinned. Quack you to the hells. An axe swung back, catching his side, and he staggered, blood seeping through his feathers. Aramis muttered a spell, a flicker of dark energy cloaking him like a second skin, and sent his brother into the fray. The sword slashed with that same steady arc, cutting into an orc's leg. He followed with a spectral hand, blackening another orc's flesh as it howled. Axes hacked at the rags, tearing cloth in jagged strips, but the figure held its ground, unyielding under the assault. Gorzod's voice cut through the chaos, a guttural roar. Intruders! His staff flared, and a beam of searing light lanced toward Battlequack, scorching his chest and dropping him to his knees. My good side, he gasped, feathers singed, his hammers slipping from his grasp. The battle stretched into a desperate grind. Drag leapt from the ridge, daggers flashing as he carved into an orc's back, dodging a club that splintered the ground beside him. Battlequack crawled to his feet, grit pulling him up, and swung a hammer weakly, grazing an orc's arm. Aramis's brother took blow after blow, rag shredding under the onslaught, yet it stood firm, sword striking back with relentless resolve. Aramis wove through the melee, his spectral touch slowing foes, his dagger darting where openings appeared. The orcs pressed harder. 2 fell to Drag's arrows, 1 to Battlequack's faltering swings. But Gorzod laughed, a chilling sound that echoed off the cliffs. He hurled a curse, a wave of shadow that chilled Aramis's bones and sent Drag reeling, his next shot veering wide. The ragged figure absorbed another strike, staggering but upright, and Aramis's spectral hand struck Gorzod's arm, drawing a snarl. Drag's arrow pierced the shaman's thigh, Battlequack's hammer cracked his ribs with a desperate lunge, but Gorzod's star flashed, smoke billowing in a thick, acrid cloud. When it cleared, he was gone, 3 orcs fleeing with him into the dusk, their footsteps fading into the wood. Damn it, Draug spat, coughing as he lowered his bow, his chest heaving. Battlequack slumped against a rock, feathers smoking, blood pooling beneath him. Slippery bastard, he wheezed, his voice barely a quack. Aramis adjusted the rags on his companion, his expression unreadable. "He's not finished," he said, his tone cold and certain. We find him. The camp yielded little: scattered coppers, a bone trinket from the altar, signs of a hurried retreat. Drugs.
Continue.
Okay, let's keep going. The flames danced, casting long shadows as the trio fell into a thoughtful silence. The trail to Gorzod waited, a thread of blood and vengeance stretching into the dark. Thornwick's gold hung in the balance, and with it, the fragile bond forming between them, a necromancer with secrets, a hunter with a grudge, and a duck with a laugh. "Northwest, then," Draug said at last, breaking the quiet. "We rest, then we hunt." Aramis nodded, his hand resting on his staff. "He won't slip again," Battlequack quacked softly, closing his eyes. "Good. I owe that bastard a hammer to the beak." The fire crackled on, a small defiance against the night, as the trio settled in to chase their quarry come dawn.